this whole question of the climate in the industrial court, whether in fact it is working to the advantage of employers, or whether it is working to the disadvantage of employers. So we're going to get ready and we're going to talk to Ozzi Walker, who is the Education Secretary of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. So let's get to the telephone and say a very good morning to you, Mr. Walker. How are you? Mr. Warwick, how are you, sir?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Ozzi Warwick.
Good morning.
Let's see if we can do this here. Good morning, Mr. Warwick. How are you, sir?
Hi, good morning, and good morning to you, sir, and good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
I thank you so much for joining us. It is great to have you this morning. A wonderful Sunday morning. Unfortunately, the labor climate remains very difficult, and whenever I get into this sort of difficulty, I feel always relieved when I can pull you in here because you can give context, which is what we seek to have here on the program. There is the general feeling from employers that the industrial court is not, let's just say, employer-friendly. And that is a view that is making the rounds in the public arena right now during a seminar hosted by the T&T Chamber of Commerce entitled The Impact of Industrial Court Judgments on Your Business. A couple of people there voiced concern regarding judgments, even calling the industrial court, as I said, anti-employer. They say big payoffs for employees and union will discourage new business startups. You, as the education officer and research officer of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, you tell me, has the industrial court made retrenchment a business, as is the claim by some business owners, sir?
All right. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond to what we consider to be an outright and blatant attack on our democratic institutions. And people have to see it for what it is. And I will break it down.
Please.
If you do the right thing, you have nothing to fear. This statement by Mr. Frank Mutte, it really, if you look through it, it speaks to, well, first of all, he represents a class. He represents an employer class who, and a tradition. We would very well know that we have a serious issue of exploitation of workers, where you have employers willing to dismiss an employee with impunity. And this is, you see, this is the point, you know. The industrial court is not favoring workers. The industrial court is simply dispensing justice. And if you as the employer class wants to simply dismiss workers with impunity without following the proper procedure, because if you think about it, if you follow the proper procedure, and you do the right thing in terms of how you dismiss a worker. Because we're not saying that you can't, we're just saying that there's a way in which you do it. And the reason there's a process is because, can you imagine, then employers can simply fire and hire at will. And that goes against, and hear this, that goes against international law. All right, in terms of workers' rights. So once you follow the right procedure, and you think Mr. Mattero know that? He knows that. He also knows. He's also been dishonest because he also knows that the trade unions have lost a lot of matters at the industrial court as well. I mean, he's not highlighting that fact that we do also lose matters. So it's not that we only winning matters. That is a dishonest statement. The other thing is, we have to realize that you have to find a mechanism and a way in which you can protect people's rights. And to me, it is an attempt to undo the issue of workers' rights. So in his mind, if you read carefully, and I was only able to read, for example, the Newsday report, so I am stating what I have read, right? As reported. It is almost as though the real big thing for him is simply they just want to be able to fire workers. I mean, you have to see it for what it is. And we have come a long way from the plantation. Mr. Mutte needs to be reminded. We have come a long way from colonialism, which Mr. Mutte needs to be reminded. And we've even come a long way since independence, where we can, in a real way, establish rights. Now, once there are rights, the court is there to adjudicate and to ensure that those rights are not violated. Now, of course, the employers also have rights, and the court has dispensed judgments in favor of employers as well. But what seems to be bothering Mr. Mute and the chamber and the employer class is that they want this ability to simply, this dictatorial, authoritative ability to violate workers' rights by being able to just fire at will.
Let me just ask you.
That is wrong.
Ozzy.
That is wrong. That has nothing to do with the trade unions being. And can you imagine a businessman saying that? I mean, I'm not even sure if sometimes they listen to themselves as to how they really and truly come across without. It is absolutely no humanity. You know, if you really read through what he said, there's no humanity.
Well, I'm trying to read into something you said, because you are a man of words. You're the Chief Education and Research Officer of the OWTU. Listeners, that voice you're hearing is Ozzi Walker. He's first guest on Brunch. Warwick, I'm sorry. I keep doing that. Ozzi Warwick, I apologize for that. What I heard is that when you mention the elite class and the plantation, it seems as though you're saying a little bit more there. Are you?
No, I'm simply saying that we have come a long way since that time. That's what I'm saying. All right?
Okay.
And we have to be also honest. We still have a type of plantation economy. And in terms of the nature of the economy itself, right? And I think many economists have talked about that. But it seems as though inside of that there seems to be this feeling that workers are nothing more than just tools to enrich a few. And that is a problem, because you cannot have a society and a system whereby you have a small elite business class that can exert force and influence. And here what is dangerous about what he did publicly. When they feel that it is not going strictly in their favor, because the court is doing nothing other than dispensing justice. As I said, he didn't mention all the matters that trade unions lost. And we do lose matters in the industrial court. And not to mention, I think he also knows, that's why I said that, I'm saying he knows. Think about it, Rennie. When I get dismissed, all right, wrongfully, when I get dismissed unfairly, let us be honest, it takes sometimes years for me to get a judgment. It takes years, and you know there is, and I'm sure... if not Mr. Boutte, I know many attorneys and knows this famous saying: "Justice delayed is justice denied."
Indeed, yes.
Okay, so you have to wait years, all right? And then when the court dispense justice, because not all the time you may lose as well, for whatever reason, or you may win. And you telling me that because the court is dispensing justice, and you don't feel that the courts are ruling in your favor, you attack the court like that. We never attack the court when we lose matters. We understand it for what it is. Now let me put a little historical context. The industrial court, honestly, Rennie.
Yes, I'm here.
Came about first in 1919. A lot of people don't know that. It wasn't implemented, but one of the recommendations that came after the general strike of 1919, when workers really had to, put down tools and fight for some level of dignity.
Anything, yes.
The colonial office came up with this idea of an industrial court to mediate between capital and labor. Okay, but it didn't come to fruition. Then fast forward, independence, and then of course the strikes and so on during the 1960s. The then government, Eric Williams, sort of dust off this particular idea and brought it into fruition under the Industrial Relations Act. So it's a creature of legislation set up to mediate between capital and labor. Now, labor, in case people forget the history, we were always very skeptical about the industrial court. George Weeks and they were very skeptical. But over time, Rennie, we've come to see, listen, at least there is at least an institution that can mediate between labor and capital. We are not always happy with the judgments. We get judgments that go against us. And this is the part that is astonishing. We get a lot of matters going against us. And if you check the statistics of the court itself, you would see as a fact that it is not in any way pro-worker or pro-employer.
You may be sending
justice as it sees.
You may be on good ground if you decided to make the argument that it's not worker friendly. In other words, you can always find a case against a body that will dispense justice, and both sides are offended. They say usually once both sides are offended, something good is happening there. The voice you're hearing is that of Ozzi Warwick. He is the Chief Education and Research Officer of the OWTU. We are looking at some statements and some opinions that were put in the public domain. This is at a seminar hosted by the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, which is saying that the industrial court is making it difficult for small businesses and startup businesses. You will find that there is agreement because recent statistics published by the World Economic Forum in their 2016-17 Global Competitiveness Report show that Trinidad and Tobago ranked 137 out of 138 countries in terms of cooperation in labor-employer relations. Now, interestingly, Professor Marie Belle Antoine, Dean of the Law at the University of the West Indies, she proffered that the recent criticism and condemnation of the industrial court is because of a lack of understanding of the principles of the industrial court itself. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think lack of understanding clearly on the part of the employer because,
yes.
I mean, they have launched a full-scale frontal attack on the court.
Yeah, she spoke to the criticism of the court. Yes, so I gather that was the...
Yeah, and it is indeed... Well, I think it's not that they don't understand, Rennie. Let me be frank. I want to put it frank. They want to take advantage of ordinary poor people. I'm saying it's plain and blunt for all of Trinidad to hear. And they hide behind their suits, and they hide behind their money, and in a way we don't really see them for what they are. And the fact of the matter is, we know you actually, for whatever reason, they seem to be coming out the closet. So what you have now is him coming out now to say, in effect, to all of Trinidad. And what is amazing is how bold and how simple they think it is to say that. They're attacking the court, but at the same time, if you listen the underneath to what he's saying, they want to roll back the rights of workers. If you give, if you think of some of the judgment, like for example, the big ones, like the reinstatement of the NP workers, that is because they felt those workers took a stand on a particular section in the OSH, which they had never liked in the first place, and so they attempted to use that opportunity to literally beat workers into submission, to have workers feel afraid and frightened. I mean, thousands of workers across Trinidad and Tobago could tell you how the employers treat with them, how they speak to them, their attitudes towards them. And I mean, I think we need to confront that. And you cannot have that type of treatment of workers and then talk about productivity.
There are many who...
Productivity is not that workers are working hard. It's a whole range of things, but one of the things I want to suggest, one of the things has to do with this, if the employer's class mentality and belief that the poor and ordinary people are nothing more than tools for them to enhance their profit margin and amass huge wealth.
Listening to advocates for employees, many argue that it's actually fairly easy to fire an employee with cause following due and fair process, and that issue is something that has to do with the question of the importance paid towards having a human resource team with a good understanding of industrial relations. So before you get to the industrial court, there is going to be a problem, but the problem could be averted if you had people in your HR department who understood or had training in industrial relations, and the lack of that is why the court plays such a big part in most issues here, save for wages, of course. Yeah,
I'm glad that you raised that. I want to be frank. You see, this human resource management thing, it's really a farce, Rennie. It's a farce. Before it was, and I'll explain to you why it is deeply flawed. On the surface of it, you would think, okay, it kind of makes sense. It's human. You have to manage your human resource, okay? But it presumes something. It really, if you think about it, it presumes that there isn't the collective power of the workers, So if you think deeply, so what it is somebody up there, like how you would have an overseer on a plantation. I like to use that analogy, and I know why I'm using it. And the overseer just simply manages the human resource, which is the slaves. right? So you tell you to go over there, you work over there, and so it's about. And if it's in the end, when you look at some of the issues that human resource managers deal with, is things they want to deal with absenteeism. So if the slave not on the plantation, where is he or she? Things like reaching late or taking a long lunch hour, real menial things. That's the point I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
Foolishness. Whereas before, it used to be about industrial relations, which is different, because industrial relations suggest that there is now a interplay of relationship between capital and labor.
Mm-hmm.
Capital has its wealth, therefore that is its power, and labor has the trade union, the collective power, because that's all you have, right? You don't have the money. So you can only match capital with collective action and collective bargaining and so on. What they want to do, and what has happened when they shifted to this idea of human resource management, these people are not trained to properly deal with the relationships, So what is happening is that it is almost the human resource management whole field needs to be completely revamped. Because most of the problems that reach the Ministry of Labor or reach the industrial court is because of poor human resource management at the shop floor level.
Which is precisely the point I raised. And when you said, for instance, it is a farce, I wanted to ask you mean in the Trinidad context, in developing world, in the Caribbean, or you mean overall?
Well, I want to speak specifically with what we see here in Trinidad.
Good
right?
enough. Thank you. Just
no,
get that
it doesn't mean that what we see in Trinidad it could be a manifestation of a more global phenomenon. It could be that too, right? But I'm just suggesting that that really and truly the failure of human resource management, simply because it's set up not to properly mediate, because that's what it's supposed to do, mediate between the worker and the management. But because what they do is they simply implement the policy of the employer, they don't mediate. They just go after the worker. The worker has no choice, and its trade union, to take the matter to a particular level. So it goes to the Ministry of Labor. And employers are not prepared to accept responsibility for when they go wrong.
Let me just do it.
Prepared for that.
Let me do the introduction here. It's 20
they
minutes
want
after.
To do what they want.
It is. I'm sorry, Ozzy.
Yeah, no problem. And now because there is a court that is saying, hey, hang on, you are not a lord unto yourself. You're not. All right? Not because you have a business and because you have a certain amount of wealth mean that you are a lord unto yourself. There are certain principles of industrial relations that you have to practice.
Take a pause there for me, Ozzy, one moment. Ozzy Warwick is the voice you're hearing, Chief Education and Research Officer of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. It is 21 minutes after 10 o'clock. I sought to have you delineate earlier on the question of the use of the plantation. You said you like to use that because it makes it clear. And the reason I ask you to make clear what you're saying here is because if we are talking about a mentality that does not recognize the individual as a person with rights, then the premise, the foundation of any sort of cooperation between the labor force and the employer is going to be a protracted situation that never will be solved.
And you see right there, Rennie, that is at the heart of it all. So long as there are people who do not see ordinary poor people as human beings with rights, we will always have this issue. And the thing is, we do not confront that. It's like the elephant in the room. We don't talk enough about it. Even commentators, they sort of skirt around the issue because, of course, you're talking about a very powerful elite in the country. And people are will always be afraid of this powerful elite. And this powerful elite is trying to hide behind small business and medium business, can't fire and make themselves come. Nonsense. A lot of the problems have to do with those big businesses.
There's a mindset that we have to deal with. The reason of exploring this and bringing it out in the open, because a result of the current global pressure and poor economic conditions across the world, businesses are experiencing undue pressure for even greater efficiency and higher productivity in their operations in order to stave off instances of layoffs, which should in the final analysis, which could rather put the final nail in the coffin of a number of businesses. The point is, how can employees and employers work together to encourage this productivity with this sort of adversarial atmosphere environment?
Well, I think, first of all, the first thing that has to change is the mentality. In other words, I can collaborate with someone who I know is respectful, who I know will treat me with certain level of dignity. Of course, I would engage in a level of collaboration. But how do you ask me to collaborate with someone who do not see me as a human being, who do not see me as one who has rights, who do not see me as one who also have a dream and aspirations? They alone are not the only ones who have dreams and aspirations for a better life for them and their children. Ordinary people also have dreams, also have aspirations to live a decent life, not an affluent life like them, but a decent life where you don't have to worry in terms of where the next meal is coming from. You cannot expect a society to be productive so long as you have this high level of exploitation. Levels of exploitation is equal to the level of productivity you will get. The higher levels of exploitation there are, then the lower level of productivity you will get. Because do not ask me to put out more so that you can live a richer life. And no, not wrong. Putting my life at risk. What about the employers who refuse, especially in all of those factories and so on, who do not follow proper health and safety? So as a worker, I put myself at risk coming to work. And then you want to be able to fire me at will. No, that is wrong.
Okay,
it is unfair and it is unjust.
Ozzi Warwick, for taking your time with me, I thank you.
Sure,
but don't disappear just yet, Ozzi. I have a final question for you. And the final question, on the one hand, we can ask employers, like we look at the industrial court situation here, because this happens from that level, but bringing it back even before we get to that point, or even after we have exhausted that point, you're going to be facing one thing. I did mention to you that Trinidad and Tobago in the area of productivity ranking 137 out of 138. I can ask an employer what they need to do to make the workers, to make the team, the collaboration more productive. Let me ask you, as the representative of workers, what can be done in the short term to increase productivity that we have slipped to the bottom of the barrel? I mean, we are one from the bottom right now. What can be done through the eyes from the vantage point of the unions by employees and the union to make this a more productive team exercise for the country?
Well, okay, first of all, I think you need to have, let me tell you what will work in short term. Proper leadership and clarity. And I'll explain. When you read the article, you also talked about the need to sit around the table. But there is a mechanism. There is a tripartite mechanism. And in the short term, what should happen is that all of business, labor, and government should come to a consensus on how we share the burden of adjustment, and then tell the country, listen, the three key sectors have met and have agreed on a way forward, at least within the short term. This is how labor will play its part. This is how business will play its part. This is how the government will play its part, whether it is to create the framework and the environment for it. So that is so there is that mechanism, and I'm suggesting that is the mechanism that has to be used in this instance to be able to move forward.
Ozzi Warwick, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning, because at the end of the day, we have to discuss this all the time. And because if we don't discuss it, I say in order to surmount a problem, you must confront it. And when you confront it, you must have discussion. And we must put the dirty laundry out in the public for the sunlight to shine on it, as it were.
Yeah, and also because when you make statements like that, then how do we in the Tripartite Advisory Council now sit across the table with you? You see how difficult they're making it. It reminded me of the whole question of this wage thing. There seemed to have been a campaign outside the domain of the tripartite mechanism to talk about wage freeze. That is not the place for that. Public space is not the place for that. What we should do is labor, business, and government need to work within the space that is provided to come up with a consensus on how we share the burden of adjustment. But it is becoming clearer and clearer to us that the business class has no intention whatsoever to share the burden of adjustment, and we have a fundamental problem with that.
Educate me, if you will, this Sunday morning as you leave me, Ozzy. From what you have represented, it sounds to me that you're saying we've got two issues here. One is that the industrial court is a fair player, is an honest broker in this. Right. He's an honest broker. He's a good mediator. On the other hand, because of the analogies you have used, it seems as though we're not just talking workplace thing. We are talking about a mentality, and you seem to be saying that the class warfare is, and tell me if I'm wrong, class warfare is what we are looking at. Is that what you're saying?
That I am saying that that is exactly what I'm saying. What we're seeing is class warfare, and what we're seeing is a particular elite class wanting to continue to take advantage of the rest of us in Trinidad and Tobago.
Somebody just put a wick on the flambeau, and I'm going to leave it right there.
Okay, thank you.
Ozzi Warwick, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
No problem.